or talk to her, there are times where she looks like she's possessed by the damn thing, or other times where like she's just scared shitless. And the Loc-Nar pretty much becomes the narrator of the film.
Welcome to the Video Store Geek Podcast, where your friendly neighborhood world film geek Albert Valentine talks about films made and released during the golden age of the VHS era.
Hey everyone, it is your friendly neighborhood world film geek Albert Valentine. Well, we have finally made it. This is the season one finale of the Video Store Geek Podcast, the podcast where I talk about films that were made and or released during the home video era. And I'm ending the year off with one of my favorite animated anthologies, and that is the 1981 classic, or cult classic, if you will, Heavy Metal, directed by Gerald Potterton. This revolves around a series of sci-fi stories, sometimes action, sometimes comedy, very adult animated. This is one of the first, like, very most popular adult animated features, and not counting Fritz the Cat, among others. But this one revolves around a glowing orb known as the Loc-Nar. It's based on a series of comics, and we have some future filmmakers and future actors who gained fame in the 80s who provide voices or worked on some of the animation here. So we're just going to get right into it. And again, this is a thank you guys, because for the past decade, doing World Film Geek, you guys supported it. And when I decided to launch this podcast this year to focus solely on these older movies, I wanted to do a film that resonates with my heart and was an all-time favorite of mine as a child to my teen years to now. And I wanted to share this with you as a Christmas gift. So let's get right into the world of heavy metal. So the first story, which goes on the opening credits, is called Soft Landing, and it's about an astronaut who retrieves the Loc-Nar and somehow ends up in a car and goes back on Earth in the car with its with parachutes deployed from the back. It's very quick. Like I said, the opening credits run during this animation sequence. And then the next part is called Grimaldi, we discover is the name of the astronaut, and he brings his daughter home to Loc-Nar as a gift from outer space. However, when the Loc-Nar reveals its intentions, it proceeds to melt the astronaut, and it's kind of gross in a way for its time. Again, this is a rated R animated film, but the guy starts screaming, and it looks like something coming out of an Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of deal. And the Loc-Nar starts to scare the living shit out of this girl. I'm going to be cursing maybe a little bit during this episode, so I'm just giving you fair warning. This will be explicit language. But the look on this girl's face, watching the Loc-Nar talk to her, there are times where she looks like she's possessed by the damn thing, or other times where like she's just scared shitless. And the Loc-Nar pretty much becomes the narrator of the film. Tells its adventures in various time frames, various places, various eras, stuff like that. How it made an impact, mostly in a negative way, in an effort to take over the world in some way. That's what I'm guessing here. But the first story that he mentions is called Harry Canyon, and it's about a cab driver named Harry Canyon in the year 2031 New York. New York has totally looked different than it is now, and it's only 6 years from now, and I really doubt it's going to look like how it looks in this movie, because remember, we're talking 1981, so thinking 50 years in the future, it looks like this wasteland, desolated dystopia of sorts. But as you all know, we're already in 2025, so I doubt that's the case. But anyway, Harry is a cab driver who takes no shit from anyone. When the guy tries to rob him, he has this little button under his brake light that is actually a disintegrator. Anyway, Harry pulls up in front of this building and this museum, and sees this woman getting accosted, and her father is killed by this disgusting looking crime boss, Rudnick, and it's about the Loc-Nar, the orb. So what happens is Harry offers to help her out, and they escape, and she escapes the Loc-Nar and tries to go to the police. It doesn't hold well. It gets to where people know who he is, and includes a couple of hookers in there. And she's like, "How you doing, Harry? couldn't take it, huh? And then he responds with, "Yeah, kiss my ass, will you?" And she responds, "I'll do it for $20." And nothing really happens there. So Harry takes the girl back to his apartment, and she awakens and she tells him the whole story of what happened with her dad and Rudnick in the Loc-Nar. And the two end up sleeping together that night, and it's what you expect for an adult animation film. I mean, it's not graphic, it's not like totally graphic, it's kind of like R-rated sex scenes that you see in this time, and there's nudity in everything. But the girl decides to sell the Loc-Nar to Rudnick. So she has Harry be the lookout, and she promises to split the money with him, and he agrees to it. And of course, she tries to double cross him after getting the money, but of course, again, Harry's the type of guy who doesn't take shit from anyone. Meanwhile, Rudnick has his hands on the Loc-Nar, and he too disintegrates. Not so much like the astronaut in Grimaldi, but he also just disappears, and that's kind of the end of it. Harry gets the money, and he just goes on his merry way. He decides to take a vacation, and he's got all the money. The next story, though, I found it quite fascinating. It's called Den, and it's about this nerdy kid who finds the Loc-Nar in a meteorite, and he decides to do some sort of experiment with it. Well, the Loc-Nar sends him to another world, and he goes from being this nerdy, prudish kid to a muscle-bound freakazoid, and he's narrating it as well in his adult form, and he's called Den because his real name is Dan, but it's like Dan Earl. I can't remember his full name, but anyway, he calls himself Den. He shows up naked and muscle bound, but he puts on a loincloth. And this kind of goes in the territory of like sort of like sword and sorcery in a way. More, but like think of a bald-headed Conan the Barbarian in a way. But what happens was he rescues this girl, this woman named Catherine, and she thanks him by, getting it on with him, but they get busted, and this guy Ard, who's looking for the Loc-Nar himself from the Queen, he holds Catherine hostage in exchange for getting the Loc-Nar from the Evil Queen, because the Evil Queen wants to use the Loc-Nar to call up this god named Ulutek, and Den agrees to do it. The fact that he has a thing for Catherine now, and he wants to, make sure she's okay. Well, once he meets the Queen is impressed with Den, and yeah, she offers herself to him as well. But Den had some guys with him to steal the Loc-Nar while he's getting out with the Queen. And of course, it turns out to be a double cross because Ard is now trying to contact Ulutek. And this ends up with one of the funniest climaxes I've ever seen because when the Queen sees Ard with the Loc-Nar, the two fight over it like bickering children. It's so funny because it starts out with the Queen going, "The Loc-Nar is mine, get away with it." And Ard's like, "Stupid bitch, get away from it. The Loc-Nar's mine." It's just ridiculous. This is the one scene I was like, it wasn't intentionally to be laughed at, but it was funny as hell to listen to the dialogue. And of course, they end up both zapped by electricity thanks to the Loc-Nar, and they both disappear. And Dennis offered a chance to go back to Earth, but he decides to decline it, because as he says at the end of the story, on Earth he's nobody, but in this world he's Den, and he's considered the hero of the land. So that's where that story ends. And then the Loc-Nar ends up. Now this is where it really gets funny. It becomes the size of a marble, and this lowly guy named Hamilton Fisk picks it up, and he decides to take it with him. And Hamilton Fisk is the key witness in a prosecution case against Captain Stern, who is this like Superman looking um space captain who was accused of like a ton of crimes, but he thinks he paid off Hamilton Fisk to kind of vouch for him so he'd get off. Unfortunately, though, as Hamilton Fisk is giving his testimony, the Loc-Nar starts to take effect on him, and he starts admitting to shit that that Stern did. And it gets to a point where the Loc-Nar pretty much takes over his body, and he has enough. And Hamilton Fisk goes from this like Den, he goes from this impish kind of nerdy type to like this monstrous, bulking, bald-headed monster who decides to go after Stern and getting everyone out of his way. And finally, when Stern gives him the money, the big guy turns back into, the impish nerd, and then Stern responds, "Oh, and Fist, goodbye," and he puts this trap door, and Fist dies, and with the Loc-Nar, and he disintegrates in outer space. Then it goes into horror territory. The next story is B-17. And I believe Dan O'Bannon worked on this. If you don't know who Dan O'Bannon is, he's one of the guys responsible for Return of the Living Dead. Now you could see his influence with the zombie genre for this particular story, because the film is set around World War II, and a group of pilots have found this island where everyone's pretty much dead, and they find these other planes in the area, and all the pilots are dead. But the Loc-Nar causes these dead people to reanimate as zombies. So it turns to this little zombie short story epic that was actually pretty dope. The animation was phenomenal. It is a little violent, a little gory at times, but still, it got his attention there. And I've wondered to this day now if this inspired Return of the Living Dead to get made, because it was done so well. So we go to our next story. And it's called So Beautiful and So Dangerous. And this one is about a woman who has the Loc-Nar as part of a pendant that she's wearing. And she's the court reporter in this case, or a businesswoman. I can't remember exactly what she did. But the Loc-Nar causes this like guy to go fucking apeshit on her and starts to try to assault her. And all of a sudden, this pipe drops down on the two of them, and they both get sucked into a spaceship. Well, he ends up dead, like dismembered, but she ends up alive. She meets this robot, this who kind of starts flirting with her. And the robot has these two alien pilots who are fucking stoners. I mean, they believe more into drinking and getting high while flying this ship. I don't know how he did this, but the robot convinces the woman to get it on with him. So while they're getting it on, you don't get to see it. You only see the aftermath. As this is going on, the two space pilots decide to start flying up in the space, and they decide to smoke some sort of weird weed type thing, like space weed, and we go on this little magic trip with them, and it's just mind blowing. And then we see, of course, I said we see the aftermath of the robot and the woman. The woman is fully naked and everything, and the robot's pretty much convincing her to be in a relationship with him, although she already has a boyfriend. But something happens, and they end up crash landing somewhere, and that's the end of that story. And then finally, we go. During this, we see parts of the Loc-Nar, talking to the girl, and the girl's still scared out of her mind. We finally get into the last story and the longest one of it all, and it's phenomenal. I mean, this is like the sword and sorcery animated phenomenon. I mean, I kind of wish this story was the full length feature film, and it's called Tarna. So basically, what happens is this volcano erupts in this little village, and everyone is turned into barbarians. And there's a barbarian leader. He takes over. I think he's the village head, or we're assuming. And the scholars nearby, they get attacked by the barbarians, and they are massacred. But the last few left, they realize there was once a warrior race called the Tarkanians, and Tarna is the last of the Tarkanians. She's the last one of her entire race. She is called into action to stop these barbarians. And of course, when she's introduced, she's full on butt naked, of course, because this was like the R-rated sword and sorcery type stuff. They had a lot of this. She puts on this like really dope outfit. It's like a black bikini with like these red boots and like a red glove, and she has this sword as her weapon. The only thing is she does not talk. She's mute throughout this entire story. She's mute. She's the last of her race. She's also mute, so we don't get to hear not even a speck of a word from her. So basically, the plot is her finding the scholars dead, some of the villagers who had also lost their lives, and she goes after barbarians. Of course, it's not without a fight. At one point, she's kidnapped and tortured, but she manages to escape. And I actually like the final battle between her and the barbarian leader, who has this like kind of reminds me of someone who came out of He-Man. He's got this like metal. He's got like a circular, like a saw for a hand, like a circular saw, and he uses that as his weapon. And then it ends with basically, um, I'm going to give a spoiler here. Because that's the end of the story. You wonder how it's, people, everyone's like, well, that's the end of the story. The girl escapes the house, and Tarna is the reason because Tarna somehow manages to destroy the Loc-Nar from her world, and it causes the Loc-Nar to get destroyed. And then the girl takes up the mantle to become the next Tarkanian. It's kind of weird, but it kind of worked at the same time. But there's a lot of fun stuff going with this movie. I mean, yeah, I mean it's adult animated. It's crazy. There's a lot of nudity. There's some sex. There's some violence, some chaos. But altogether, this is one of my favorites. It's not so much because of those. It's pretty cool to see these different eras and different somewhat genres within the sci-fi realm used in for this one movie. And as I mentioned, there's like future filmmakers like Dan O'Bannon worked on this. We had for the voice cast, we had John Candy. He was a police officer in Harry Canyon. He's the robot who gets down with the girl. He's Den and Dan, and we had Eugene Levy. He's one of the alien. He's Captain Stern. He's also one of the aliens who gets doped up in So Beautiful and So Dangerous alongside Harold Ramis, of course, of Caddyshack and Ghostbusters fame, and um, Marilyn Lightstone, who 4 years after this scared the shit out of me, quite frankly, when she played Crusher in the GoBot series. Don't ask about that because um, if you see how she looked and the way she did the laugh for a 6-year-old kid, this will scare the shit out of you. I guarantee it. Maybe. Unless you're really brave. But at that time, I was not. So, I could tolerate it now. But yeah, we have all these famous voice actors. Robert Romanus was the voice of Harry King, and he passed away a few years ago. Rest in peace. Um, Rodger Bumpess, who voiced Squidward on SpongeBob, he's the voice of Hamilton Fist. John Vernon was the judge in the Stern short story. So yeah, there's a lot of famous voice actors in this movie. And another cool thing about heavy metal was its friggin' soundtrack. You had songs from Journey, Blue Oyster Cult, Sammy Hagar, Devo, Don Felder, Riggs, Cheap Trick. I mean, they all contributed to this soundtrack. I mean, that's how freaking great this movie is. And I believe it did not do well in the theaters, but it's gained a cult following since being on home video. And I remember seeing this for the first time. I was about, oh God, I think I was about 11 or 12 when I first saw this, and I saw it on cable when it was still a really cool thing because, cable's not as great as it is now, but don't say anything to anyone. But yeah, I ended up getting I believe I got the Blu-ray of this movie right now. So you can get it on Blu-ray, you can get it on DVD. There was a sequel that came out, Heavy Metal 2000, that didn't quite fare long. It's actually unlike this film, it's one whole story, and the main character is modeled and voiced by the late Julie Strain. God rest her soul. But it did not do as well. And then there was a reboot planned in 2008. Unfortunately, it didn't happen after years of development, but it did inspire the current Netflix series Love, Death, and Robots that Tim Miller created. Because Tim Miller was actually one of the filmmakers who was going to contribute to the reboot of heavy metal. And if you haven't seen Love, Death, or Robots yet, I have not seen it yet, but I plan to. Maybe sometime in January, I'll start watching that. Because I got a lot of stuff to catch up on that I'm going to be starting with January. And so this is going to be on my schedule to probably check out in January at some point. But yeah, so Love, Death, and Robots, if you haven't seen it, I heard it's really good. It's an adult animated sci-fi thriller series. I think it's in its fourth season out, but this was originally developed as the reboot to heavy metal. So you definitely got to check that out if you're a fan of heavy metal, I think, because I heard some good stuff about it. Um, but yeah, that is it for heavy metal. Like I said, you can get it on Blu-ray, you can get it on DVD. It is streaming as well. You probably have to rent or buy it at this point right now. It used to be on Tubi. It's no longer on Tubi as far as I know, as of today. But um yeah, definitely. If you like anthology films, heavy metal has to be on that list, in my opinion. And that's it. Season one is officially over, of the Video Store Geek Podcast. I launched this in August, late August. We had 10, this is a 10 episode season. And, with that, I'm really happy for everyone, that you guys support, World Film Geek. And I hope you guys get to support this podcast as well. I kind of want to shift the focus of World Film Geek to the newer indie films, which is why I'm doing this podcast to talk about the older films. So that's where I'm going now with this. And because I've been doing it for 10 years. So we're going to year 11 in 2026. But I want to focus more on the newer films, the newer indie and global films, of course. Because that's what, the ones that deserve more attention, no matter how cheesy it might be. So, but yeah, if you don't know, you probably know by now, we are now have its own YouTube channel, the Video Store Geek Podcast. The link is in the description of this episode. It's going to be youtube.com/VSG podcast. We're also on Spotify. That's where we're just going to be on those two platforms for this podcast. And again, thank you for your support for this season. Season one is wrapped. Season two, we're starting on January 12th. And we're going to focus the first 4 episodes on the Ghoulies franchise. So we're going to start with Ghoulies, and then we're going to 2, 3, and then 4. And then in March, we're going to go into the Gate franchise, Gate 1 and Gate 2, the one with Stephen Dorff and Louis Tripp. And then we're going to go from there. And I'm hoping in 2026, I will say, if you're listening out there and you want to talk about an older film released during the VHS era, and you thinking about, maybe you have a suggestion, or maybe you want to be a guest, join me on a journey and talk about some of these films, and give your opinion on it, and we can do a cool collaboration on that. Just talk about our love of films. You can contact me at videostoregeekpodcast@gmail.com. That's videostoregeekpodcast@gmail.com. I'm just trying to remember it. I'm talking a little fast, so excuse me for that. But anyway, thank you again for your support of World Film Geek for the last 10 years. We're still going. In the words of Chubbs from Happy Gilmore, we've only just begun. And I hope you all have an awesome Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I can't wait to see you guys again in 2026, because I am taking a much needed break. So with that said, I want you guys to do what you always do, and that is stay awesome. And I'll see you guys again in 2026.
Thank you for listening to the Video Store Geek Podcast. Don't forget to check out worldfilmgeek.com for the latest reviews, interviews, and news in the world of indie and global cinema. And see you on the next episode of the podcast. Stay awesome, film geeks.